Okay, so before I begin, I would like to let you know that this is probably going to be a much longer form video, as I am discussing a template that, while I like it, I don't think should be in the book. And I'm going to be giving my reasons why. That being the White Court Vampire, as you have presumably gleaned from the title, which I firmly believe is only in here because Thomas is a major character in the novels. Don't get me wrong, I like Thomas, but we'll get to that. With that warning out of the way, strap in, because this is going to be a ride. So, let's start out, as always, with the Dresden Files lore. What is a White Court vampire? Well, a White Court vampire is a vampire that feeds off of emotion. Unlike Red Court vampires or Black Court vampires, or presumably Jade Court vampires, which we know nothing about, White Court vampires are born rather than made. They might be considered the weakest of the vampires, but they're also one of the most dangerous for the same reason. They are the most human-like. White Court vampires are in possession of some kind of dark entity within them. Their hunger, their beast, their demon, there are different names for it. And this beast hungers for the life energy of humans. How White Court vampires get that varies, although it would seem that the grand majority of them are sex vampires. Incubi, succubi. They feed off of the passion and lust created with acts of, sex. And they're very, very good at creating that emotion. Other known emotions that they can feed on are going to be wrath, despair, and if I'm not mistaken, fear. Hey, look, I'm not mistaken, fear. Yeah. Okay. So the last bit of information that we have on them, other than something I'll cover in my White Court Virgin video, which is a totally different template, is that some of them can choose, or I guess all of them have the capability to do so, they just don't. They can choose to kind of spread out their feeding, right? Like they can take just a little bit from a much wider herd of creatures, as it were. And from there, kind of, while they'll be horribly hungry all the time, they'll still be able to use their powers. Because if they don't feed, they get weaker and weaker, and their demon becomes more and more prevalent. So when a White Court vampire is hungry, his or her eyes get really pale. Their skin is already going to be pale, but it's going to be more so. Their blood is paler, like the wrong shade of red, if you look closely at it or know what to look for. Finally, based on what emotion it seems that they feed off of, a counter emotion can be used to harm them. In the books, we have only seen this as true love being able to defeat White Court vampires that feed off of lust, which the main White Court antagonists tend to do in the books. So true love, mutual true love, destroys White Court vampires that feed off of lust. The only reason we suspect other emotions could destroy other White Court vampires is simply based on a suggestion in the role-playing game. So, for instance, a vampire that feeds off of despair might be able to be defeated by an act of true selfless hope. a vampire who feeds off of fear could be defeated by true selfless courage. Why true and selfless? Because the love thing only works if the love is 100% genuine with no qualifier on what that actually means. Because you can't define love. So, with that out of the way, let's go over their, in the RPG, mechanics and abilities. Right? So, naturally, as always, they're going to need a must, giving them a high concept. That's odd. That is very odd. There we go. Okay, yeah. So your White Court vampire is going to need to take a high concept that indicates he is such as Black Sheep of House Wraith or White Court Dancer are the suggestions they give. Sorry. It goes on to give suggestions on how the GM can compel this. Generally speaking, by hurting the vampire by throwing true emotion at them. The player needs to... Well, I'll get to that later because it's not actually mandatory. But you must take the following abilities. Emotional Vampire on page 189 for -1 refresh. Human Guise for +0 refresh on page 176. Incite Emotion Touch Only, -1, page 172. Feeding Dependency, +1, page 190, which affects the following abilities. Inhuman Recovery, -2, page 185, the catch being true love or other appropriate emotion for +0. Inhuman Speed, -2, page 178. Inhuman Strength, -2, page 183. Alright, so that's all the mandatory. Putting the minimum refresh at -7. So these guys are already mid-tier. White Court vampires may upgrade some of their listed abilities as an optional thing. They can take the more expensive versions of Incite Emotion, again, page 172, so that they can diversify what emotion they can actually cause and feed off of, as well as being able to upgrade how exactly they cause it. Like, they could upgrade from touch only to having some kind of aura of lust about them. Let's see. Right, and they can choose to upgrade their Inhuman Recovery to Supernatural Recovery. What I was going to say earlier that I cut myself off of is that while optional, the book really encourages that you decide what house you come from, and they don't give you examples aside from House Wraith, but you can make one up. You need like a house of vampires to support you, because family is everything to White Court vampires, and that'll probably come into play in your aspect. Now, they do make for wonderful player characters from a sheerly mechanical standpoint. You've probably read the novels if you're playing these games, and if not, we have seen White Court vampires like lift cars and bend weights in half effortlessly, being able to keep pace with a magically powered super dog in a foot race. So all very interesting. Now, the reason and my personal thoughts here on why I don't like them as player characters is because at the end of the day, they are still monsters, right? Sure, the basis for what makes a player character or what makes a mortal in the Dresden Files RPG is the presence of free will. But how much free will do White Court vampires really have? Sure. In the books, we have the one example of Thomas. The one example. And he is the exception to so many rules. Thomas is awesome. He is a fun character. He, in a lot of ways, makes a great foil for Harry, as well as a fantastic ally. And, well, in the first few times he's showed up, I got a really good laugh out of him. In the game, though, and even in the novels, Thomas has to feed, right? He still eats people. Thomas is still hurting people, just even if it is just a little bit at a time, right? He is still taking part of their life energy every time he eats, and sure, he spreads it out. But honestly, you'd also have to work very hard to explain how you're getting these little bits without hurting anybody, right? Like if you feed off of fear, which, and I've seen somebody do this in a game, sure, you could hang out at a movie theater, but you would definitely need to take incite fear with an aura around you of it, so that puts you at -8 or 9 refresh. Anyway, maybe I'm overthinking this, but a white court vampire is a monster at the end of the day. They might be the most human-like, but they still act according to their natures with one notable exception. The only other times White Court vampires have helped out Harry Dresden or the White Council of Wizards at large was entirely out of self-preservation every single time. Right? Oh, they're allied with the Chicago Alliance in the later books out of self-preservation. They have a common enemy. And even then, no one in the Alliance actually trusts them. Right? Like, we see that. Why? Because they're monsters. I'm sorry if I've reiterated that point maybe one too many times. I don't like them. Are they my least favorites? No. I've established lycanthropes are my least favorite for player characters. At least White Court vampires have the potential to be very interesting. So with all that out of the way, something I have been doing lately, the big old jar of video ideas. Let's see what happens next. My players' favorite memories. Well, look forward to that tomorrow, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Have a fantastic rest of your evening. And think about what I've talked about today. Any of you that are looking to be prospective game masters, regardless of system, think about the options presented to your players and yourself. Players, think about it as well. Why are you taking certain choices? Thank you very much once again, and have a good one.